let's step back and talk about the timing. What was the big momentum here, and who was really pushing it? Some suggest it was Obama legacy. It was people just getting fed up. Different political leaders had other agendas. So if you could talk about where the momentum for this was coming and why now.
So some of this, a lot of this has to do with President Obama. One of the biggest reasons that we have never seen a functional international climate agreement before is the United States. The United States has never had a climate policy. The United States is the largest historic emitter, and until now, the United States went to Kyoto and demanded that the rest of the world cut its emissions. The United States had no climate policy. It had never put forth a plan to cut carbon emissions. No such policy was in the works. Gore would have liked there to be such a policy in the works, but there wasn't a bill, there was nothing, which is, one reason why Kyoto fell apart. The U.S. has had no credibility. The U.S. showed up at Copenhagen. The U.S. was in an interesting position when it showed up at Copenhagen because a bill had at that point passed the House. A cap and trade bill had passed the House. And Obama and John Kerry came to Copenhagen and said, this bill is going to pass the Senate, the United States is going to have a climate change law, everyone else needs to act as well. I had a fabulous and amazing interview with one of the Chinese delegates in Copenhagen who said there is no way in hell Harry Reid is going to get 60 votes for that bill on the board, in Chinese through a translator. And it's amazing to me how closely the rest of the world has watched the U.S. on climate policy and understands so clearly, exactly sort of where things are. And so that was kind of a moment to me where I realized this is not happening. No one believes the United States, and they were right. The bill fell apart. There was no climate policy. So Obama came into his second term. He knew that 2015 was coming up. He knew that there was no chance of getting a climate bill through Congress. So he used a tool that he had available, which was the Clean Air Act. He had the legal authority to put forth these carbon cutting regulations on coal-fired power plants using the Clean Air Act. It was very controversial. It was very legally bold. We'll find out if they stand up when they go before the Supreme Court, probably next year. But he did it, and he didn't need Congress. And there's now several sets of major new regulations in place that are going to lead to the shutdown of hundreds of coal-fired power plants, that are forcing U.S. automakers to aggressively build and try to market electric vehicles. These policies have fundamentally changed what the U.S. is doing, and now, for the first time, the U.S. could go to the table at these negotiations and say, we've got something. We've got a policy in place. We're acting. Game changer. Second game changer, air pollution in China. Chinese government, I don't think they care that much about climate change. They care a lot about the bad air in China. They care a lot sort of about the protests about this, sort of the citizen unrest about it. They're interested in cleaning up the air. That means regulations on coal plants. Secondary benefit to that, you cut your carbon emissions. So domestically, the two biggest polluters were working at home of their own accord, not with any kind of outside force. And John Kerry, at the beginning of 2014, who sort of, mainly because I think climate change is a personal passion of his, decided he wanted to see if he could make something happen. He worked behind the scenes in Beijing to get the U.S. and China to make an announcement last November 2014, that they would jointly move forward to cut their carbon emissions domestically. That was it. That broke the logjam. And then the second piece of that was the deal reached in Lima, Peru, about a month after that, which laid the groundwork of every single country, universal agreement, creating their own similar plans along the lines of the US and China. So by the time we got to Paris, it wasn't a poker game. It wasn't, well, I'll do this if you do this, but I don't know what you're going to do and I don't know what you're going to do. Everyone had already done it.